They said they were old friends. I didn't know what they wanted. But the second I saw their faces, I knew exactly who they were. And that single moment brought back every single memory I had spent a decade trying to bury. The humiliation. The isolation. The name they called me that I still hear in my nightmares. They destroyed my confidence once, but now they were standing in the middle of my success, waiting for me to let them in. And I had a choice to make. My name is Aria Vance, and for most of my life, I felt like I was invisible. I grew up in a small town where people knew everyone's business, and my family's business was that we didn't have much money. My father worked 2 jobs, and my mother took in sewing from neighbors just to keep us afloat. We never went hungry, but we also never had extras. New clothes were a luxury. Eating out was a fantasy. While my classmates talked about their summer vacations to Europe or their new cars, I was just trying to make sure I had enough change for the bus. I learned early that being quiet was safer than being noticed. Because if you were noticed, people started asking questions you didn't want to answer. The school I attended was a private academy, and I only got in because of a scholarship. It was supposed to be the golden ticket to a better future. Instead, it became my personal battlefield. The students there came from families with old money, trust funds, and connections. I came with a second-hand uniform and a hope that maybe, just maybe, no one would notice the difference. But of course, they noticed everything. It started small. A comment about my worn-out shoes. A laugh when I pulled out the same sandwich for lunch every day. But then it became targeted, deliberate, and cruel. And the people who led the charge were 3 students who seemed to have everything: Darius Fox, Tamara Knight, and Simon Hayes. They weren't just popular. They were the blueprint of what everyone at that school wanted to be. And they decided I was their favorite target. Darius was the golden boy. Captain of every sports team, effortlessly charming, with a smile that could get him out of any trouble. Tamara was his perfect counterpart. Rich, beautiful, and sharp-tongued. She could destroy you with a single sentence and make it sound like a compliment. Simon was the quiet one, but in many ways, he was the most dangerous. He didn't need to shout. He just watched, observed, and then whispered the things that would hurt the most. They were the nucleus of the school's social hierarchy, and they made it clear from day one that I belonged on the outside. My first real interaction with them was in the cafeteria, just a few weeks into my freshman year. I was sitting alone, as usual, when Tamara approached my table. She looked at my lunch, a simple sandwich made from whatever was left in our fridge, and smiled. "My mom gives our leftovers to the shelter," she said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "It's nice to see someone actually appreciates them." Laughter erupted around me. I felt my face burn red, but I didn't say anything. I just pushed my tray away and pretended I wasn't hungry. Darius walked by and bumped my table, knocking over my water bottle. He didn't even stop to apologize. Simon just looked at me with a faint smirk. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to prove that I was more than just the scholarship kid, the poor kid, the charity case they thought I was. But every day they found a new way to remind me that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be one of them. The school was planning a massive gala, the biggest social event of the year. Tickets were expensive, and you needed formal attire. When my parents heard about it, they tried their hardest. My mother spent weeks altering an old dress of hers to fit me. It was beautiful, but it wasn't new. The night of the gala, I walked into that grand hall feeling proud. I felt like Cinderella, finally getting her night out. But fairy tales don't exist in high school. As soon as I entered, Tamara spotted me. She walked over with her signature smirk, flanked by Darius and Simon. "Aria," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Sweetheart, you're not supposed to wear vintage unless it's actually expensive." People turned to stare. I could feel their eyes scanning my dress, my hair, everything. Darius chimed in, "Doesn't she look like she stepped right out of a history book?" More laughter. Simon didn't say anything. He just tilted his head and looked at me like I was a science experiment. My pride crumbled into dust. I wanted to run, but I was frozen. I felt the tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I left the gala early, walked home alone in the cold, and cried in my room for hours. That night, I made a silent promise to myself. I was going to leave this town. I was going to build a life so successful, so powerful, that none of those people would ever be able to look down on me again. I didn't know how I would do it, but I knew I would. It was the only thing that kept me going through the rest of high school. I graduated with honors and left town the next day. I had a small scholarship, a burning ambition, and a chip on my shoulder, but I had a relentless drive and a memory of a cold night and a cruel joke that still fueled me. Every time I wanted to give up, I pictured Tamara's smirk. I heard Darius's laugh. I saw Simon's cold stare. And I kept going. My design started to gain attention for being both beautiful and practical, for being made for real people who had real lives. The reviews were good. Then, they were great. One small boutique took a chance on my collection, and it sold out in a week. From there, things snowballed. I opened my own studio. I expanded my team. A few years later, I was preparing for my first major runway show. It was going to be held in the city's premier event space. Celebrities were coming. Press was coming. This was the moment I had been working towards my entire adult life. In the weeks leading up to the show, I was a tornado of stress and excitement. I was living a dream I never thought I would achieve. My team was incredible, my designs were finished, and everything was on track. I had finally built a life where my past felt like a distant memory. My mother's sewing machine had been replaced by a state-of-the-art atelier. My father's worry had been replaced by his pride. I had done it. I had escaped. The night of the show was electric. The venue was buzzing with energy. Backstage, it was controlled chaos. Models were getting dressed, makeup artists were doing final touches, and I was overseeing every single detail. My heart was pounding with anticipation. This wasn't just a show. This was my declaration to the world, and to myself. Then, my assistant, Jenna, approached me with a look of concern. "Aria," she said, "there are 3 people at the front door. They aren't on the guest list. They say they're old friends of yours from high school." I froze. Their names are Darius, Tamara, and Simon. For a moment, the noise of the backstage disappeared. I was back in that cafeteria. I was back at that gala. I was the poor girl with the second-hand uniform. I told Jenna to send them away. I didn't have time for this. But then she returned a few minutes later. "They're insisting. They said they just want to see you for a minute. They said it's about your event." Curiosity and a cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. I couldn't imagine why they would be here. What could they possibly want? I walked to the front entrance, my heels clicking on the polished floor, my heart thumping against my ribs. I saw them standing there, looking completely out of place. They weren't dressed for a fashion show. They looked nervous, worn out. Time hadn't been as kind to them as they probably expected. But they were still the same people. I saw Darius, his athletic frame looking soft. Tamara, her face etched with a desperate hope. And Simon, the silent observer, looking around at my success with obvious discomfort. "So," I said, crossing my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you want?" Tamara stepped forward first, her voice trembling. "Aria, we need to talk to you. We need your help." The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. I almost laughed. I remembered Tamara's cruelty, the calculated way she tore me apart. I remembered a night in the cold, walking home with my dreams in pieces. Now, they were standing in the middle of my greatest triumph, asking for help. "Help?" I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "You have got to be joking." Simon finally spoke. "Aria, I know we don't deserve to be here. We know we treated you horribly." He paused, looking at the floor. "We were young. We were stupid. Darius chimed in, please, Arya. We saw your name in the papers. Your business is doing amazing. We know you have connections. We're in a rough spot. Our company is going under. Our investors bailed. We need an opportunity. We heard you're looking to expand your manufacturing, and we have a small factory that's about to close. We just need you to use it, give us a contract, anything. I stared at them, processing the sheer weight of what they were asking. The same people who had made my life a living hell were now standing in my professional sanctuary, begging me to save them. They had an interest in my business. They had seen my success and decided they wanted a piece of it. Tamara, emboldened by my silence, continued. Look, we know you're successful. We know you worked hard. You really made something of yourself. She tried to smile. I always knew you were going to be someone. The lie tasted bitter. Really? I asked, stepping closer. Because I remember a gala. I remember you laughing at me. I remember you called me charity case. Tamara's face paled. That was so long ago. I turned to Darius. And I remember you knocking over my tray, making me feel like I was invisible. I remember the years I spent hiding in the library because I was too ashamed to be seen in the hallways. Now it was Simon's turn. And you, I said, my voice dangerously low. You with your silent smirks and your quiet whispers. You were the worst of them. At least the other two were honest about their cruelty. You just watched. You just judged. You let them do the dirty work while you enjoyed the show. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. The noise from the runway started, the pulse of the music vibrating through the floor. My show was starting. My moment was here. But I wasn't done with them yet. You have a lot of nerve coming here, I said. You humiliated me. You broke me down. For years I questioned my own worth because of you. And now you stand here and tell me you know I worked, but sympathy wasn't on the menu. I looked at them, these reminders of a past I wanted to bury. You're right, I said, and a flicker of hope lit up their faces. You're right that I could do that. I paused, letting them breathe. But I'm not going to. Their faces fell. Here's the thing, I continued. When I was sitting in that cafeteria, eating my leftovers, you made sure I knew I was beneath you. You made sure I knew I didn't belong. But I kept going. I got myself an education. I built my business from the ground up. I did it with my own hands, my own ideas, my own relentless work. I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a trust fund. I had nothing but the knowledge that I was better than the way you treated me. And I was right. And now, you're the ones who are struggling. You're the ones who are desperate. Simon finally spoke, his voice rough. So you're going to turn us away? Just like that? After we came all this way? Just like that, I said calmly. This isn't a movie. I don't owe you a redemption arc. You don't get to walk out of my past and into my future just because you decided you need something from me. You thought I was nothing. You made sure I knew it. And now you expect me to forget all of that because you're in trouble? Tamara started crying, real, desperate tears. Please, Arya. I know we were terrible. We were so terrible. But this is our livelihood. This is our family's legacy. Please. I watched her cry and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just a deep, profound sense of peace. I had spent years wondering what it would feel like to have them at my mercy. I thought it would feel like victory. I thought it would feel like a final, crushing revenge. But it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like closure. I could stand here and scream at you, I said, my voice softer now. I could remind you of every cruel joke, every whispered insult, every time you made me feel small. But what would that accomplish? It wouldn't make me a bigger person. It wouldn't change the past. And it certainly wouldn't make me happy. I took a step closer to them. What I'm about to say isn't for you. It's for me. When I was a teenager, you made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Like my family wasn't good enough. Like I didn't deserve to be in the same room as you. But I got smarter. I got stronger. And I realized that the problem wasn't me. It was that you needed someone to step on to make yourselves feel tall. I looked at each of them. The real tragedy isn't that I was poor. It's that you were cruel. You had everything and you chose to use it to hurt people. That's not success. That's just cowardice. Darius opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not interested in your excuses. I've heard enough excuses to last me a lifetime. A security guard approached, looking at me for instructions. I shook my head. It's okay, they were just leaving. They hesitated, clearly not wanting to go. My show is about to start, I said. And I'm not going to let you ruin another important night for me. You had your chance, and you wasted it. Now you have to live with that. Goodbye, Darius, Tamara, Simon. They stood there for a long, awkward moment, their pleas dying in their throats. Then, slowly, they turned and walked away, slinking out of my event space like the shadows they were. I watched them go, and a feeling washed over me. It was more peaceful than I ever imagined. I stood in the backstage area, watching the lights and the music pulse from the main hall. The show was going on without me, but I wasn't worried. My team had it under control. I was the creator, the builder. The machinery of my success didn't stop just because I had to deal with a ghost from my past. I took a deep breath and walked to the side of the runway, peeking through the curtains. The models were walking, the crowd was cheering, and it was beautiful. This was my world. I had pulled myself up from nothing, and now I was the captain of my own destiny. There was no bitterness in that moment, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had built this all by myself. But the encounter lingered in my mind for the next few days. I replayed every word of their desperate plea. I thought about Tamara's tears, Darius's nervous rambling, and Simon's shameful silence. I could have easily called the press. I could have exposed their financial troubles and their pathetic attempt to leech off my success. That would have been the kind of revenge the old me would have craved. The old me, the scared teenager, would have wanted to destroy them the way they tried to destroy me. But the new me, the person I had become, understood something far more important. The people who humiliated you often don't remember you the same way. They remember you as a footnote. I thought about the people who had actually helped me along the way. My first mentor, Mrs. Chen, who saw my designs and gave me my first big break. My best friend, Lena, who held my hand through the darkest times. My parents, who gave me everything they could, even when they had nothing. These were the people who deserved my loyalty, my time, and my generosity. Not the ones who tried to break me. I had built a family from the people who chose to love me, and they were more important than any blood relation or high school connection. That was a lesson I had learned the hard way. A few days after the show, I received a follow-up letter from Tamara. It was a long, rambling message, full of half-baked apologies and guilt trips. She talked about how her life had fallen apart, how Darius had lost his job, how Simon's marriage was failing. She talked about how they were just kids, and didn't know better. It was the kind of letter that is designed to manipulate. I read it once, and I put it in my drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence was its own form of power. I had moved on. I was no longer the girl they humiliated. I was the woman they couldn't even reach. That was the most powerful statement I could make. Weeks turned into months. My fashion line was a smash hit. I was getting invitations to speak at conferences, features in major magazines, and offers from investors who wanted to help me expand. I was at the top of my game. But I never forgot where I came from. I made a conscious decision to use my platform to help others who were in the same position I had been in. I started a scholarship program for underprivileged students who wanted to study fashion. I partnered with organizations that provided free business training for young entrepreneurs. I wanted to be the person that no one was for me. The guardian angel who swoops in and says, "I believe in you." I told my story in a keynote speech at a young entrepreneurs conference. I stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people and I told them about the gala, the cafeteria, and the long walk home in the cold. I told them about the moment I decided to change my life. And I told them about the day they showed up at my show. There were people in the audience crying. I could see the recognition in their eyes. They knew what it was like to be underestimated. They knew what it was like to feel like an outsider. They knew what it was like to be told they didn't belong. After my speech, a young woman approached me. She was trembling, holding her portfolio tightly to her chest. "Ms. Vance," she said, her voice shaking. "I just wanted to say thank you. My teachers told me I would never make it. They said I didn't have the talent. They said I was just wasting my time. But I saw your work, and I thought, if she can do it, so can I." I looked at her, seeing my own reflection in her eyes. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do," I said. "The only person who gets to decide your future is you." I looked at her portfolio and saw the raw talent. I gave her my card. "Send me your work. I'll help you get started." She hugged me tightly. That moment, right there, meant more than any award or any magazine cover. It took me a long time to realize that the biggest revenge isn't making someone pay for what they did. The biggest revenge is refusing to let them define you. It is refusing to become bitter and cruel like them. It is becoming exactly who you were always meant to be, in spite of them. I am no longer the poor girl from the scholarship. I am a fashion icon, a businesswoman, and a mentor. I am a pillar of my community. I am someone who creates opportunities instead of taking them away. And that is a victory that no amount of humiliation can ever touch. I never saw Darius, Tamara, or Simon again after that night. I heard through the grapevine that they had lost their family businesses and had to declare bankruptcy. They lost their homes, their status, their pedestal. I felt a twinge of sadness for them, not because they deserved my pity, but because I understood how much they had lost. They had fallen from the pinnacle they were born into. But I didn't dwell on it. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I simply accepted it as the natural consequence of a life built on privilege instead of integrity. It's a lesson they had to learn the same way I learned mine. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had said yes. If I had given them the contract, brought them on as partners. It would have been poetic, in a way. The girl they bullied becoming their boss. But it would have been a false victory. It would have tied me to my past, when I had worked so hard to escape it. I realized that my success was my freedom. And I refused to let them back inside the fortress I had built for myself. Some doors are meant to stay closed. It doesn't mean you're holding a grudge. It just means you're protecting your peace. One day, I have a family now, a real one. I'm married to a wonderful man, Marcus, who fell in love with me not for my success, but for my story. He saw the scars and he kissed them anyway. We adopted a beautiful little girl named Maya. When I look at her, I see a world of infinite possibility. I will never let her feel the way I did. I will teach her that her worth is inherent, not given by others. I will teach her to be strong, to be kind, but to never let anyone define her. And I will teach her to build her own castle instead of begging for a room in someone else's. The other day, Maya came home from school in tears. Some older kids told her she didn't belong. She asked me why people have to be so mean. I held her close, and I told her about the cafeteria, the gala, and the long walk home in the cold. I told her about the 3 people who tried to break me. And I told her about the night they showed up at my fashion show, desperate and broken, begging for my help. I told her that I didn't say yes. And I told her why. I explained that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is survival. I explained that forgiveness doesn't mean giving people access to hurt you again. And I explained that the best revenge is living a life so full, so joyful, that the people who tried to tear you down become nothing more than a distant echo. I looked into my daughter's eyes and I said, Maya, the world will try to tell you who you are. It will try to put you in a box based on where you come from, how you look, or how much money you have. But you are the only person who gets to decide your worth. And you are worthy. Not because of what you achieve, but because of who you are. She wiped her tears and nodded. She hugged me tight and said, I love you, Mom. And in that moment, all the pain of my past felt worth it.